Okay, I need to tell you about the moment I realized my mom wasn't just weird. She was straight up a sociopath, and yes, I have receipts. Like, actual proof. And the worst part? It took me 16 years to figure it out. 16. Which is honestly embarrassing because looking back now, the signs were literally screaming at me. But when you grow up in something, you don't question it. You just adapt. You normalize it. You survive it. So this all really started on a random Tuesday night. Nothing dramatic. No big fight. No screaming. That's what makes it worse. Because the moment everything clicked, it was quiet. Too quiet. I was in the kitchen doing homework, right? Just sitting there, AirPods in, pretending I understood algebra. I didn't. When my mom walks in. And she's in one of her moods. You know those moods where someone isn't mad, but you can feel something's off? Yeah, that. She just stands there for a second. Watching me, not saying anything. And I remember thinking, why is she just standing there like that? It wasn't normal. But then again, a lot of things in my house weren't. Who are you texting, she asks. Out of nowhere. No hello, no context. Just that. I pause my music and look up. What? I asked who you were texting. Her voice is calm. Too calm. I wasn't texting anyone, I say, holding up my phone. I'm doing homework. Which was true. For once. And then she smiles. Not like a normal smile. More like the kind of smile people do when they already think you're lying. Oh, she says. So you're lying now? I literally blinked. Because what? I'm not lying, I said. I just told you. You always do this. She cuts me off, still smiling. You lie straight to my face like I'm stupid. And here's the thing. This wasn't new. This kind of conversation happened all the time. So my brain immediately went to, okay, what did I do wrong this time? Because somehow it was always me? I'm not lying, I repeat, already feeling that tight feeling in my chest. You know the one, like you're about to cry but you don't even know why yet. She walks closer, slow, deliberate, and sets her phone down on the counter. I can see everything, you know. That's when my stomach dropped. Because what does that even mean? I literally wasn't texting anyone, I said again, my voice getting shaky. And then she just tilts her head, like she's studying me, like I'm some kind of experiment. Wow, she says softly. You're really committed to this. Committed to what? At this point, I'm confused, annoyed, and low-key panicking. Because I genuinely didn't know what she was accusing me of. I didn't do anything, I said. Can you just tell me what you're talking about? And then she laughs. Actually laughs. But it's not like funny, it's cold. Short, like she's laughing at me. You know what? She says, forget it. And then she grabs her phone and starts walking out. Just like that. Conversation over. And I swear to you, that should have been the end of it. Weird? Yes. Normal for my house? Also yes. But something about that moment stuck with me. Like, it didn't sit right. At all. Because usually when she accused me of something, she had a whole story. A whole explanation. She'd drag it out for hours. But this? She just dropped it. Like she didn't need proof. Like the point wasn't even whether I did anything. That's when I had this random thought. What if she knows I'm telling the truth? And just doesn't care? And I literally froze. Because that idea? That was new. I sat there for like 10 minutes just staring at my homework. Not doing anything. Just thinking. Replaying the conversation over and over. Trying to figure out what just happened. And then I did something I'd never done before. I opened my messages. And I checked. Like, really checked? Every app, every notification. Everything. Nothing. No texts. No calls. No anything. Exactly what I said. So then I went to my room, closed the door, and just sat on my bed like, okay, so what was that? Because if she didn't have proof, if she didn't actually think I was texting, then why did she say it like that? That's when the second thought hit me. And this one actually scared me. What if she just wanted me to feel guilty, even if I didn't do anything? And I wish I could say I brushed it off. That I went back to normal. That I didn't think about it again. But I didn't. Because once that thought entered my brain, everything started to look different. Like suddenly I started remembering things. Little things. Stuff I never questioned before. Like the time she told my aunt I had anger issues. Which I didn't. I mean, yeah, I got annoyed sometimes. Who doesn't? But she made it sound like I was constantly out of control. And I remember sitting there like, wait, when did that happen? Or the time she grounded me for talking back. Except all I said was, I didn't say that. That was it. That was the whole talking back. Or the way she'd tell me I said things I knew I never said. And when I'd deny it, she'd just go, you don't remember. You always forget. And I believed her. That's the worst part. I actually believed her. I started thinking maybe my memory was just bad. Maybe I really was saying things and forgetting. Maybe I was the problem. But sitting there on my bed that night, for the first time ever, I had a different thought. What if I'm not the problem? And I swear, the second that thought hit, I felt this weird mix of relief and fear. Relief because maybe I wasn't crazy. But fear because if I wasn't the problem, then what did that make her? I didn't have the word for it yet. I didn't know how to explain it. All I knew was something wasn't right. And I wish I could say that was the moment I figured everything out. That everything suddenly made sense. But it wasn't. Not yet, because the next morning, she acted completely normal. Like nothing happened. Good morning, she said, smiling. Making breakfast, like we didn't have that weird conversation at all. Like she didn't just accuse me of lying for no reason. Like she didn't mess with my head for literally no reason. And I just stood there like, are we seriously not going to talk about last night? But I didn't say anything. Because that's what I always did. Stayed quiet, moved on, pretended everything was fine. And that should have been my second red flag. Actually, no, that should have been like my 50th. But this time felt different. Because I couldn't shake it. No matter how hard I tried. And later that day, something happened that made everything worse. Way worse. Because I found something on her phone. Something I wasn't supposed to see. Something that proved, that night in the kitchen, it wasn't random. At all. And that's when I realized I might have been living in a lie my entire life. And I wish I could say that was the worst part. It wasn't. Okay, so remember how I said I found something on her phone? Yeah. This is where everything starts to get actually messed up. And before you say anything, no, I wasn't snooping, at least not on purpose. It was the next day after that whole kitchen thing. I got home from school, dropped my bag, and my mom wasn't there, which wasn't unusual. She was always running errands or busy or whatever. But she left her phone on the kitchen counter, unlocked screen on, and I know how this sounds, I know. But tell me you wouldn't at least glance at it because I did just a quick look. And at first it was nothing, just normal stuff, texts, notifications, random apps. But then I saw my name. Like actually saw it in a message thread. My stomach dropped instantly. Because why is my name in her texts? And why is it with my aunt? I hesitated for like 2 seconds and then I tapped it. I wish I didn't, but I did. And the first message I saw, yeah, that's the one that changed everything. Mom, I think she's lying again. She's gotten really good at it. I literally froze, like my brain just stopped. Because what? I scrolled up slowly, heart pounding. Mom, she was on her phone last night, acting all secretive. Aunt, what was she doing? Mom. She won't admit it, just kept denying everything like usual. I felt sick, actually sick. Because that's what the kitchen thing was about, that's what she was talking about. Except none of that happened. I wasn't being secretive, I wasn't texting anyone, I wasn't doing anything. But the way she described it, it sounded like I was hiding something, like I was guilty. And then I saw the next message. Mom, I'm honestly starting to think something is wrong with her. Something is wrong with her. I had to sit down because my legs literally felt weak. Like she actually believes this, or worse, she's telling other people this on purpose. I kept scrolling, I don't even know why. I think part of me was hoping I misunderstood, that there'd be something that made it make sense. There wasn't. Aunt, have you thought about therapy? Mom, I have, but she'd probably just lie there too. I just stared at that message over and over. She'd probably just lie there too. At that point, my chest felt tight again. But this time it wasn't confusion. It was something else. Anger. Because this wasn't just in my head anymore. This wasn't me remembering wrong, this was her actively telling someone else. A completely different version of reality. And then it hit me. This wasn't new. This is just the first time I saw it. I dropped her phone like it burned me, literally just set it down and backed away. Because suddenly everything felt fake. Like I didn't know what was real anymore. All those times she said I was lying, all those times she said I forgot things. All those times she told other people I had problems. What if none of that was true? What if she just decided it was? And that thought, that one, messed me up. Because if someone can just decide who you are and everyone believes them, then what does that make you? I went to my room and shut the door, locked it. And I just sat there staring at the wall. Okay, think. I started going over everything. Every argument, every weird moment, every time I felt like something was off. And suddenly it all started lining up. Like puzzle pieces. Like the time she told my teacher I was struggling emotionally. Which again wasn't true, I was literally fine, just quiet. Or the time she told my friend's mom I wasn't allowed to hang out because I needed to work on my behavior. What behavior? And I remember being so confused back then, like did I do something and not realize it? But now it felt different. Now it felt like she was creating a version of me. And then acting like it was real. And the scariest part, people believed her. Because she's good at it, like really good. She's nice, charming, always knows what to say. In public, she's literally the perfect mom. Teachers love her, other parents love her, even my friends used to say things like, you're so lucky, your mom is so nice. And I just smile and nod because what was I supposed to say? Yeah, she's nice unless you live with her. No one would believe that. And that's when it really hit me. This wasn't just random. This wasn't just her being strict or dramatic. This was something else. Something intentional. And I hated that realization. Because once you see something like that, you can't unsee it. I grabbed my phone, opened my notes app, and started typing. I don't even know why, I just felt like I needed to document it. Like if I didn't write it down, I'd start doubting myself again. So I wrote everything, the kitchen conversation, the messages, how I felt, what didn't make sense, everything. And at the bottom I wrote, I'm not crazy. I stared at that for a long time. Because I needed to believe it. But a part of me still didn't. Because what if she was right? What if I really was forgetting things? What if I really was the problem? And that's when I had another thought. What if I test it? Like what if I actually paid attention, started noticing things in real time? So I made a decision right there. I was going to start watching her. Not in a creepy way, just paying attention to what she said, to what she did, to what actually happened. And then compare it. Because if she was telling the truth, everything would line up. But if she wasn't, then I'd finally know. And honestly, part of me was scared to find out. Because if I was right, if she really was doing this on purpose, then that meant something way worse than just strict parenting. It meant I couldn't trust her at all. And realizing you can't trust your own parent? Yeah, that's not something you're ever really ready for. But I told myself I was overthinking, that there had to be another explanation. There always is, right? Except there wasn't. Because later that week, she did something that made it impossible to ignore anymore. Something so obvious, so deliberate, that I couldn't even lie to myself about it. And that's when I realized this wasn't just in my head. She knew exactly what she was doing. And it was only getting worse. So after that week, I started paying attention, like actually noticing everything. She did every word, every look, every tiny action. It's exhausting, by the way. I don't recommend it, but once you see someone manipulate reality, you can't unsee it. It started small little things at first. She'd forget she promised me something like a movie. Or hanging out with friends, and then act shocked when I reminded her I never said that she'd say, and he believed her. And I couldn't even argue, not really, because if I said I didn't do it on purpose, she'd roll her eyes, smirk, and say, you're always full of excuses. It was subtle at first, but gradually I realized she was doing this all the time. Everything was a test, every conversation, every interaction she was watching to see how I reacted. And if I didn't react the way she wanted, boom, she rewrote the story. Then there were the lies to other people. She told my friends I was manipulative, told my teachers I was unreliable, told relatives I had emotional issues. And the craziest part, everyone bought it, everyone. At first I questioned myself constantly. Am I really this bad? Am I just overreacting? Maybe I am lying to myself. But the more I watched, the clearer it became. I wasn't imagining it, she was creating a narrative about me that wasn't true and controlling how everyone saw me. She also had this way of flipping kindness into control. Like the time she bought me a new phone after mine broke at first. I was happy, but then she said, I only got it for you because I know you'd ruin the old one if you had more freedom. You can't be trusted otherwise. And somehow I felt guilty for receiving a gift. Every time I tried to stand up, she'd gaslight me. Don't be ridiculous, that never happened. You're imagining things, you're too sensitive. I literally couldn't even, I wanted to scream, cry, run away, but I had to keep my cool. And then came the bigger moments. Like when she accused me of talking back in front of my aunt, I said nothing rude, literally didn't raise my voice, and she spun it into a full-on tantrum story to my extended family. I remember my aunt asking me if I was okay, and I just nodded because what could I say? It got to the point where I started keeping mental notes. Every lie, every manipulation, every subtle attack. I even started texting myself summaries like receipts so I wouldn't forget. Mom told my cousin I'm rebellious. Mom says I was mean to her, I wasn't. Mom denies saying she said something when she literally did. And the scariest part, she never admitted it, not once. She was charming in public, smiling, laughing, perfect. No one would believe me if I said what really went on at home. I tried telling my friends small things at first. Like, yeah, she said this weird thing. And they'd say, your mom, that doesn't sound like her, or you're overreacting. And that's when I realized not only was I doubting myself, but everyone else doubted me too. By the end of that week, I felt trapped. Everywhere I went, every interaction I had, it was like I had to tiptoe around her. I couldn't say anything without her twisting it. I couldn't do anything right. And the most terrifying part, she knew it. She knew exactly how to keep me off balance. And then came the breaking point. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was at home doing homework. Headphones in, trying to drown out the quiet pressure in the house. She came in smiling that perfect public mom smile and said, can we talk? And I thought maybe this time it would be different. Maybe she would acknowledge something. Maybe she would be normal. But nope. She started talking about how ungrateful I was, about how I didn't appreciate all she did for me. How I constantly argued and lied. Every word was a complete rewrite of reality. Every accusation was false. And I just sat there stunned. Because this was the culmination of months, years of gaslighting. And in that moment, I finally understood. This wasn't about me. This was about control. This was about power. This was about her shaping reality to fit her story. And she didn't care how it affected me. I sat there for what felt like hours, listening, trying to argue. But every rebuttal was instantly turned against me. I realized something terrifying. I couldn't win, not here, not ever. And that's when I knew my mom wasn't just manipulative. She was a sociopath. Cold, calculating, and utterly indifferent to anyone's feelings but her own. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run. But I couldn't. I was trapped under her roof, under her rules, under her story of me. And that's when I decided I was going to keep documenting everything. Every word, every action, every lie. Because if anyone ever doubted me, I needed proof. And little did I know this was only the beginning. The real chaos was yet to come. After that Saturday, I started noticing everything even more closely, every word, every expression, every subtle twist in what she said. It was exhausting, but I couldn't stop. I had to know what was real and what wasn't. She would set traps without even realizing it. I swear sometimes it looked accidental, but it never was. Like the time she asked me to clean the living room and said, don't touch the decorations, but left them in the middle of the floor. When I moved one slightly, she gasped and said, see, look at what you did now. I have to fix it. I froze because I literally hadn't done anything wrong, but somehow I was guilty again. And that's when I realized this was a pattern. She created problems that didn't exist and then punished me for them. I started keeping a journal, actual notes of events, dates, times, what happened, and what she said. I even started taking screenshots of messages and recording some conversations without her knowing. I knew it was extreme, but I couldn't risk forgetting or doubting myself again. The next big moment came a week later. I had a school project and needed her help. She agreed at first, but then halfway through she started criticizing everything. I did, saying it was wrong, useless, stupid. I tried to explain my approach, but she just laughed and said no. You don't understand at all. Then she went on to tell my friends over text that I didn't know how to work independently and needed constant supervision. I couldn't believe it. She literally turned a normal school project into evidence that I was incapable. At that point, I knew she didn't just manipulate reality in private, she did it publicly to anyone who would listen. I confronted her about it that night. I said, why are you telling people I can't do anything? She looked at me and smiled and said, I'm just worried about you, you need guidance. And I wanted to scream, because her version of guidance was rewriting who I was and making me look incompetent everywhere. I sat in my room later that night crying and typing in my notes. All of it, every lie, every manipulation, every time she made me feel insane. And then I realized something terrifying. It wasn't just the lies, it was the pattern. The control, the way she could make everyone doubt me, including myself. I googled behaviors of sociopaths at 2 a.m., scrolling through article after article, nodding at each point. Lack of empathy, check. Charm in public, check. Manipulation, check. Gaslighting, check. Control disguised as care, check. I couldn't believe it all matched perfectly. And I started connecting dots from my childhood. All those times I felt like I was living in a nightmare that no one else saw. I remembered family dinners where she'd humiliate me, subtly in front of everyone, and then smile saying she was joking. I remembered teachers telling me how lovely she was and how proud they were of me, and realizing how easily she had twisted their perception. I remembered every time she turned my small mistakes into proof. I was troublesome or ungrateful, and I felt trapped, because if this was true, then everything I believed about my family life was a lie. And it was terrifying because it wasn't just about being a strict parent. It was about living with someone who actively rewrites reality and makes you doubt yourself. I started noticing small manipulations constantly. She'd move objects, then blame me for losing them. She'd give me gifts with strings attached. She'd tell stories to relatives and friends that painted me as dramatic or difficult. And the worst part, I realized she did all of this effortlessly. Smiling, laughing, perfect mom persona in public and ruthless manipulator in private. I couldn't confront her anymore. Not directly, because she would twist it, turn it into me being hostile or ungrateful. So I did the only thing I could. I documented everything meticulously. I kept receipts, notes, screenshots, timelines. I started planning little strategies for myself to survive each day to protect my sanity. It was exhausting, but I had to do it. Because I couldn't let her erase me completely. And that's when it hit me fully. I wasn't safe with her. I wasn't believed. I couldn't trust my own parent. And realizing that completely alone is something I wouldn't wish on anyone. I started talking to my best friend about it in small hints, slowly testing the waters. She didn't fully get it at first. She thought I was exaggerating, but slowly she saw the pattern too. It helped a little knowing someone else was seeing it. But it didn't fix the fear, the constant pressure, the feeling that I had to watch every move and word. I started to understand that this was going to define my life for a while. That living with a sociopath parent means always strategizing, always questioning yourself, always documenting, and I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't unhear it. I couldn't unlive it. That was the moment everything changed, and I realized I had to survive carefully every single day, and little did I know the next months were going to test every limit of patience and sanity I had. After that week, things escalated fast. I started noticing how calculated she really was. Every interaction, every word, every oops was deliberate. She started rewriting my actions more openly. Something I did one way in private suddenly became something completely different when she told others. Like the time I stayed late at the library. She told my aunt I was skipping school and lying about my grades. I remember sitting on my bed, staring at my notes, rereading everything I had documented, and thinking I literally cannot make this up. It wasn't just her words. It was the way she could twist my reality. And everyone around me bought it. Teachers, friends, family, they all believed her version. I started comparing my life to my friends. Their parents were messy sometimes, sure, but no one was constantly questioning their reality, constantly making them doubt themselves. I realized what I had been feeling for years. Constant anxiety, fear of being wrong, second-guessing everything wasn't me. It was her. She didn't care if I was hurt. She didn't care if I cried. She didn't care if I hated her. She only cared that her story was the one everyone believed. I tried subtle confrontation. I said things like, "Mom, that's not what happened." She'd just smile sweetly and say, "I'm just trying to help you remember correctly." And I knew in that moment it wasn't about help. It was control. Pure manipulative control. I started keeping a mental map of her behavior. Every lie, every manipulation, every subtle threat. I noticed patterns like a predator hunting its prey. And I realized that's exactly what she was. One night I was alone in the kitchen. I had my notebook open, writing down everything from the day. She walked in smiling, acting completely normal, and said, "Why are you writing that? You don't want people to think badly of me, do you?" I froze. I realized she wasn't just manipulating me, she was watching me document her. She knew, and I couldn't stop. The fear hit me. The thought that my own parent could see me planning against her? It was terrifying. But I kept writing. I kept documenting. I couldn't trust my own memory anymore without proof. The big realization came a few days later. I overheard her on the phone with a friend, describing me in exact words that matched all my notes. She was proud of her version of reality. She laughed. She smiled. And I felt my chest tighten because I understood fully. I was completely powerless in her narrative. I remember sitting on my bed shaking. I had never felt more alone. And yet, oddly, I felt clarity. For the first time, I could see the truth. She was a sociopath. There was no denying it. Every behavior, every lie, every manipulation fit perfectly. The why didn't matter anymore. What mattered was survival. I couldn't trust her. I couldn't show vulnerability. I couldn't depend on anyone believing me. I reached out to my best friend in small ways, sending messages like, "Can we talk? Something's really wrong." Slowly, she began to see it too. Her support helped, but it didn't make it less terrifying. By then, every day was a careful dance. One wrong word could be twisted. One action could be misrepresented. One mistake could be turned into proof I was bad or dishonest. I started thinking long term. I had to protect myself. Document, plan, survive. And that's when I truly realized. Living with a sociopath. Parent doesn't just hurt. It changes your perception of reality. You question yourself constantly. You second guess everything. You grow up learning that even your own feelings can't be trusted. And in that moment, I swore to myself I would never give her that power again. I would survive. I would document. I would remember. Because if I didn't, I would cease to exist in my own story. And that's when I knew. Everything from this point forward was about protecting my reality. Because no one else could do it for me. After the full realization, life didn't magically get easier. It just got clearer. I knew what I was dealing with, which helped. But it also meant I had to live with it every day. I started keeping my distance emotionally. I stopped volunteering personal information. I stopped sharing feelings. I stopped hoping she'd validate me. It wasn't easy. Some days it felt like I was walking on glass, trying not to trigger a storm I couldn't predict. Every word, every look, every tone had to be calculated. I leaned on my best friend more than ever. Sometimes I'd text her in the middle of the night, small updates about my day, asking for perspective. She listened, believed me, helped me feel sane. And honestly, that was a lifeline. I also realized how many habits I'd developed to survive without noticing. I'd learned to agree even when I didn't, to nod, to smile, to play along, to erase my own feelings in favor of hers. It was exhausting. Therapy helped too, once I found someone I trusted. Putting everything into words, examining patterns, and finally labeling what was happening made me feel less crazy. It was validating, though it didn't remove the fear or the constant caution at home. I started keeping meticulous documentation, not because I wanted to expose her, but because I needed proof to myself. Proof that my reality existed, that my memory was valid, that my feelings mattered. And you know what? The weirdest part is, even after labeling her behavior, I still loved her in some way. Not blindly, not like before, but there's this complex grief for the parent I thought I had, for the safety I believed existed, for the home that was never really safe. I've learned to trust myself more now, to check in with my own reality, and to question narratives that don't feel right. I've learned that boundaries aren't optional, they're essential. And yes, I still struggle. Some days I still doubt myself, still feel guilty for needing space, still replay conversations and wonder if I overreacted. But now I recognize those thoughts. They're leftover echoes of years of manipulation, not truth. Looking back, I can see all the red flags I ignored, all the moments I brushed off, all the subtle manipulations that should have screamed warning. But I've stopped blaming myself. Awareness is power. Some people might think I'm exaggerating. Some might say it can't be that bad. But for anyone watching this, anyone reading this, if you've ever questioned your reality around someone who's supposed to love you, trust your instincts, document, protect yourself. You're not crazy. I still live with her. I still have to navigate her presence, her words, her version of reality. But I'm stronger. I'm cautious, but I'm aware. I see her patterns before they trap me. And I'm building a life where I define my own reality. And that's the hardest lesson of all. You can't control who a sociopath is, but you can control how you survive them. Has anyone else gone through this? Tell me I'm not alone. Because even after all this, I still struggle to accept that someone so close could be so calculating and so disconnected. And that's when I realized surviving doesn't mean forgiving. It doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to live with the truth, no matter how painful. Because that is your power, your reality, your story. And no one, not even your own parent, can take that away from you. And that's where I am now. Still cautious, still vigilant, still healing. But finally aware. That was the moment everything changed, and I couldn't unsee it. After accepting the truth, I started thinking about the future. I couldn't change my past, and I couldn't make her change. But I could plan my life in a way that protected me. I began setting boundaries, small ones at first. I stopped sharing personal information freely. I stopped volunteering my emotions for her to twist. I stopped expecting empathy. And for the first time, I noticed the freedom in that. I also started seeking spaces where I could feel safe. Like friends' houses, school clubs, and online communities. Even tiny pockets of normalcy became essential. It was like oxygen for my mind. Therapy became a routine, not just a lifeline. I journaled, I processed memories. I practiced affirmations. I am not the problem. I am not to blame. I exist. Sometimes saying it out loud felt silly, but it helped cement my reality against her manipulation. I began learning about narcissistic and sociopathic behaviors more systematically. Understanding patterns, triggers, and tactics helped me anticipate her moves and detach emotionally. Knowledge became my shield. At school, I started noticing the subtle ways I'd been conditioned to doubt myself. I realized I hesitated before speaking up, second-guessed my instincts, and even avoided excitement because I'd been trained to fear scrutiny. Recognizing this pattern was painful, but it allowed me to reclaim small pieces of myself. I also started reconnecting with hobbies I'd abandoned because she dismissed or undermined them. Writing, drawing, even simple walks outside, things I could do without her influence, became acts of quiet rebellion. Little victories, but powerful. The hardest part, though, was grief. Grieving the parent I thought I had. The warmth, care, and protection that should have been there but never was. It's a grief that never fully leaves you because it's tangled with anger, fear, and love. Even now, I occasionally catch myself reacting the old way, hesitant, cautious, measuring words, but I remind myself, you're allowed to exist in your own truth. I started thinking about independence. Moving out, saving money, making plans for a life where I could fully be myself without fear or manipulation. The idea terrified me, but it also motivated me. I also realized the importance of support networks. Friends who believe you, mentors who guide you, therapists who validate you. Even one ally makes the difference between feeling trapped and feeling empowered. And slowly I started noticing confidence creeping back. I started trusting my own instincts, validating my own memory, and realizing that even if she continued to manipulate, it wouldn't define me. I still document everything, of course. Notes, screenshots, journals, my receipts, my proof. Not to catch her, not to expose her, but to reassure myself that my reality exists. That I exist outside her narrative. Some days are harder than others. Some interactions still make my chest tighten. But I now have strategies, boundaries, and awareness. I know when to walk away, when to stay silent, and when to engage carefully. And the most important thing I've learned is this. Survival doesn't mean submission. Surviving her isn't about pleasing her. It's about protecting myself, preserving my reality, and building a life that's mine. I've also started asking myself questions I never dared before. What do I want from life? Who do I want to surround myself with? How do I define myself outside of her shadow? These questions are scary because the answers require independence, courage, and sometimes confrontation with uncomfortable truths. But they're also liberating. I've realized my story doesn't have to be dictated by her. It doesn't have to be rewritten by anyone else. I am allowed to write my own narrative. And that more than anything feels like hope. Because even after all the manipulation, gaslighting, and control, I still exist. I still feel, I still remember, and I still get to choose my life. That's my reality now. Fragile at times, yes, but fully mine. And maybe someday if she ever sees it, she'll realize that her control doesn't define me. But until then I survive, I document, I heal, and I live. Because that's the truth she can't touch. And that's when I finally understood. Surviving a sociopath parent isn't about winning. It's about claiming yourself back piece by piece, and never letting them rewrite your story again. Life didn't magically become easy after realizing the truth about my mom. It just became manageable in a way. Manageable doesn't mean fun. It doesn't mean peaceful. It means I finally knew what I was up against. I started creating routines to protect myself. Morning, evening, homework, breaks, everything had a little buffer so her manipulations wouldn't hit me unprepared. I labeled things in my journal: safe, neutral, danger. It sounds dramatic, but it worked. I began noticing the small victories. Like when I could finish an assignment without her interrupting, or when I got validation from a teacher or friend without her spinning it. Those moments felt huge, like breathing for the first time after holding my breath for years. I also learned to manage my emotional responses. I practiced staying calm even when she tried to provoke me. If she twisted my words or blamed me for something, I'd pause, breathe, and write it down. Documentation became both shield and weapon, not against her, but against my own doubt. I started reaching out more to friends and online communities. Sometimes I'd post subtle things like, "Ever feel like you can't trust your own family?" And the replies shocked me. People shared stories like mine. People validated me. I realized I wasn't crazy. I wasn't alone. School became a little sanctuary. Teachers couldn't manipulate my reality, and friends saw the real me. I still had to tiptoe around certain topics. But having spaces where I could just be myself, messy, imperfect, real, made a huge difference. I also picked up old hobbies I'd abandoned because she mocked or dismissed them. Writing, drawing, even simple walks outside became tiny acts of rebellion. Small freedoms, but powerful ones. I started thinking seriously about independence. Saving money, planning for college, imagining a life where I could breathe freely. The thought terrified me, yes, but it also motivated me. Every little step toward that goal felt like reclaiming pieces of myself she'd tried to erase. Even with progress, there were setbacks. She'd catch me off guard with a comment or a manipulation tactic I hadn't anticipated. Sometimes I'd feel the old fear tighten around me. But now I had tools. I had awareness. I had support. I had my reality documented and intact. And slowly over months, I started noticing shifts in myself. Confidence creeping back. Instincts sharpening. The ability to trust my own judgment, even when she tried to gaslight me. I realized that surviving her didn't just mean avoiding harm. It meant reclaiming my life piece by piece. I also had to grieve. Not in a dramatic way, but quietly. Grieve the parent I thought I had. Grieve the childhood I didn't get. Grieve the trust I couldn't give. That grief was heavy, but acknowledging it made me stronger. Some days I still struggle. Some days I still doubt myself. But the difference now is I know what's left over from her, manipulation, and what's truly me. That distinction is everything. I began experimenting with boundaries. Small ones at first, limiting conversations, avoiding certain topics, walking away when she started twisting reality. It was freeing. Each boundary I set felt like reclaiming ground that had been taken from me for years. And I started thinking bigger. Future goals, friendships, independence. Planning a life where I could exist on my terms without fear or gaslighting. It was exciting and terrifying at the same time. I realized that surviving a sociopath parent isn't about confrontation. It's about preparation, awareness, and reclaiming your own reality piece by piece. And through all of this, I started noticing something beautiful. The more I focused on protecting and defining myself, the smaller her manipulations became. She could twist my past, try to control my present, but she couldn't define my future. And that realization, tiny, gradual, quiet, was the moment I felt a little bit of freedom. Not total freedom, not yet, but enough to keep going. Enough to start believing I could really build a life that was mine. Some days I still journal every interaction, screenshot every text, note every manipulation. It sounds obsessive, but it's survival. And I know it won't always be like this, but for now, it keeps me sane. And through all this, I keep asking myself, how do I want my story to end? Who do I want to be in it? And slowly, I'm learning the answer. Because for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm not just surviving. I'm existing on my own terms, and that more than anything feels like hope. Looking back, it's wild how much of my life was shaped by someone who didn't see me as a person. It wasn't malicious in the way people imagine abuse sometimes. There were no screams, no broken doors, but the effect was just as heavy. Invisible chains that made me doubt everything about myself. I've learned that surviving a sociopath parent isn't about revenge. It's not about proving them wrong or exposing them to the world. It's about keeping yourself intact, your sense of reality, and your dignity. It's about knowing the truth of your life and holding on to it, even if no one else does. Some days I still think about the what-ifs. What if I had known sooner? What if I'd left earlier? What if people had believed me? But those thoughts don't control me anymore. They're just reminders of how far I've come. I've also learned that love doesn't have to mean blind trust. You can love someone and still protect yourself. You can care for them, but refuse to let them manipulate your world. That lesson was brutal, but necessary. I still struggle with certain triggers, the way she smiles, the subtle shifts in tone, the casual dismissals, but now I recognize them before they hurt me. I can pause, breathe, and remind myself this isn't about you. This is about her story, not your reality. I journal regularly. Sometimes I write letters I'll never send, just to process events. Sometimes I text my friends about small victories or confusing moments. Sometimes I sit alone and just breathe. It's all part of reclaiming my mind and my life. I've started thinking about long-term independence seriously, moving out, building a life where I can fully exist without fear, and finding people who see me as I am. It's scary but exciting. Every step toward freedom is a reminder that I am in charge of my story now. And here's the hardest truth I've learned. The person I loved and trusted most didn't exist the way I thought she did. But the person I am discovering, resilient, cautious, aware, is real. And that's what matters. So to anyone out there who feels trapped by a parent or family member like mine, document. Protect your reality. Reach out to people who can validate your experience. Trust your instincts. You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. You are surviving. And slowly, you will reclaim yourself. You will learn to exist without their manipulation defining you. You will find pieces of freedom in your own life, even if the chains of your past haven't fully disappeared. It's not a neat ending. It's not a perfect story. There are still days of doubt, anger, confusion, and grief. But there are also days of clarity, independence, and strength. And those days are worth holding on to. Because in the end, surviving a sociopath parent isn't about winning. They can never truly take your story if you hold on to it. I still live with her, yes. I still navigate her world. But I do it on my terms now. I speak carefully, I set boundaries, I protect myself. And for the first time, I feel like I exist in my own reality, not hers. And that's when I realized, surviving doesn't mean forgiving. Surviving doesn't mean forgetting. Surviving means remembering who you are, keeping your mind and heart intact, and reclaiming the life that's yours. Piece by piece. And that's the story I needed to tell. Because maybe someone out there needs to hear it too. Has anyone else gone through this? Tell me I'm not alone. And that's when I realized, this wasn't normal.